Modi has surprised many by investing considerable political capital in high-powered diplomacy as early in his term, even though he came to office with little foreign policy experience. Long sentence, but nevertheless, where do you think the error is? Yeah, understand the context meaning also, so you will be able to identify where the error is. Again, I'm not too sure if you have been able to identify the error, but I'm just going to go ahead and brainstorm the answer. Discuss the answer. So if you look at the context, basically the context is saying Modi has surprised many by investing considerable political capital in high-power diplomacy as early in his term, even though he came to office with little foreign policy experience. So basically, what is the context saying? It's saying, he didn't have much of a foreign policy experience, but still he was able to invest considerable political capital in high-powered diplomacy very early in his term, right? As soon as he took up that responsibility, or he was given that position, even though he did not have relevant experience, he was still able to implement something quite early in his term, right? Which means, if you look at the context, it says as early. It's almost like a positive degree, and almost as the as is missing after early, right? As early as, but that's not the meaning we want. There is no comparison happening here. It's like an incomplete positive degree phrase. So what I need is, I need an intensifier telling me or emphasizing the fact that even though he did not have enough experience, he still went ahead and was able to implement something quite early in his term. So early in his term. Are you getting the point? So as is an incorrect word here. What I need is either, quite or so early in his term. I need an intensifier which is emphasizing, for emphasis, emphasizing the fact that even though he did not have relevant experience, he was still able to implement something quite early in his term, so early in his term. Are you getting it? So this is an error pertaining to intensifiers, right? I need a word which brings in that meaning where there is emphasis on the fact that though, right? Even though is a clue phrase for us, in fact, an antonym clue phrase explaining the whole meaning of the context. The students ran out of the classroom so soon as the bell rang. This one, if you notice, it's just the opposite of what we looked at in the previous context, right? Because here, the context is more referring to time, right? The earlier context, we deleted as and we replaced it with so. Here, what we need to do is just the opposite, right? The error is in part C, where we delete so and replace it with as, because the expression that I need in this context is as soon as. Why? Because the emphasis is on that one event happened immediately after the other, right? So the bell rang, then the students ran out. So it is the emphasis or the focus is on, let's say the context is indicating that one event happened immediately after the other, right? The bell rang, the students ran out, right? So the emphasis is here. So this is like an inappropriate intensifier here. I don't need so here, right? It doesn't bring the meaning or the emphasis that the context is trying to express. So the students ran out of the classroom as soon as the bell rang would be correct. So we replace so with as, yeah? Milk has become very much dear owing to the summer season. Where do you think the error is? Okay, so let's brainstorm. Milk has become very much dear owing to the summer season. So when I'm reading it, I know there is an unnecessary intensifier here in part B, right? This very is not required at all, right? Because milk has become much dear owing to the summer season, meaning it is more in demand, or people are consuming more of milk. The reason being it's summer season. So I don't need that very, which is, it's like double emphasis, not required, right? It's an unnecessary intensifier there. See, for example, a lot of us actually use very much in different contexts, like thank you very much, right? That's one context. It's a standard phrase, which is fine. But instead of saying, everything you want is much closer than you think. Right? I don't have to say everything you want is very much closer than you think. That very in that context is unnecessary. Let me put down some example sentences so you're able to follow when I don't need an intensifier in the context. Because the context by itself is giving or providing the required emphasis. Let me put down the same example that I said. Everything you want is much closer than you think, right? So the fact that much is there itself is bringing in that emphasis. Yeah, so I don't need everything you want is very much closer than you think. This very is inappropriate here. Right? Just to give you other examples, I can say God is much closer than you think or than you know. Right? I don't need God is very much closer than you know. I don't need two words emphasizing the same point or the same meaning or bringing in the same, expression in the context. Are you following? So that's why the error is in part B, where we delete very. Yeah, we're done with intensifiers. So the error type that we looked at, the last couple of example sentences are pertaining to intensifiers, right? So we understand when there is an unnecessary intensifier. We also understand when there is an incorrect intensifier based on the meaning that the context is bringing in. Let's move to our next error type. Let me see if you're able to identify that error type. It was so lovely weather that we spent the whole day in the garden. So where do you think the error is in this one? It was so lovely weather that we spent the whole day in the garden. According to you, which part do you think has the error? Okay. So just to highlight, let's look at part A. Okay. It was so lovely weather. I know in this phrase, weather is my noun. Now just because lovely ends with ly doesn't mean it's an adverb. It's actually a adjective describing the weather. What sort of a weather? Lovely weather. So here, lovely is an adjective. So let's see where the error is. So ideally in this context, so is an incorrect word to emphasize that, right? Here so is acting as an intensifier. What is an intensifier? Something that emphasizes. It is added for emphasis, right? So if I can say, let's say you're having tea, right? You go to somebody's house, they offer you tea, and then you can say this tea is good. But if you want to emphasize, you can say the tea is so good, right? So I know so is used as an intensifier to bring in the meaning of emphasis. But here in our context, so is not the right intensifier to bring in emphasis of the lovely weather. What is the word that I have to replace so with? Such. Such would be it was such lovely weather. So why should I replace so with such? Because such is used to emphasize the adjective in a noun phrase. So basically this is a noun phrase. Which one? Lovely weather. Where weather is my noun and lovely is my adjective describing the noun. So in this noun phrase, the right intensifier would be such and not so. Right? Let's look at another example. So I can say he is such a nice man. Right? So this is the noun phrase. I have the indefinite article, I have nice which is the adjective, and I have man which is the noun. So this is a noun phrase, right? So before a noun phrase, if you want to bring in emphasis, the right intensifier would be such and not so. We don't say he's so a nice man. Incorrect. He's such a nice man. Correct. Likewise, it was such lovely weather, not so lovely weather. Are you following? But at the same time, you also need to understand, this is when we are talking about a noun phrase. Okay. But of course, you can use so to emphasize an adjective. Like you can say, for example, I've been so busy, right? So in this context, there's no noun phrase as such. I'm just adding so to emphasize this busyness, which is the adjective, right? Describing something that I am. I've been so busy, or these games are so boring. So boring is my adjective describing the games. I'm still using so here to intensify. It's like saying it's so cold. The weather is cold, right? Cold is an adjective describing the weather. So I can say it's so cold or I'm feeling so cold, right? So I can still use so to bring in emphasis of only adjective, but if it's a noun phrase, right? I have a noun, I can have an adjective, and usually a noun phrase starts with an article, right? A definite or an indefinite article. And then I use such. That's the slight difference. I want you to remember this. Yeah. So the only difference between so and such is I can use so to bring an emphasis and put it before an adjective, like these examples that we just saw. I've been so busy and these games are so boring. However, when there is a noun phrase in front of a noun, don't use so but use such, right? So I can say I feel so cold, but the same thing, it's such a cold day. Are you following the difference? Do you see the difference? I feel so cold. Cold is the adjective. I have put so, bringing an emphasis of the adjective. But in the next sentence, I'm saying it's such a cold day. Why? Because a cold day is a noun phrase. है ना? Indefinite article, adjective, day, noun. Are you following? Right? Just to clarify this, let's quickly, I'm going to put on additional example sentences, but I want you to understand the context difference between so and such. Very, very important. You will have errors pertaining to this. These are nothing but intensifiers which bring in emphasis. We'll look at some more example sentences. So I can say, she was so nice. She was such a nice girl. The children seemed so happy. She seemed such a happy woman. I hope you are following the difference. So nice, adjective. Such a nice girl, noun phrase. So happy, adjective. Such a happy woman, noun phrase. Okay? And that's why our error is in part A. We replace so with such. Yeah? I hope this is clear. So any errors pertaining to intensifiers to do with so and such, you should be able to quickly spot. This can be so a gradual process that you are not aware of it happening. This should be an easy one since we have spent so much time understanding the basic difference between so and such. Where is the error? So it says this can be so a gradual process that you are not aware of it happening. But if you look closely, right, we've spent so much considerable time understanding this whole difference between so and such. So the first error that you will identify is obviously in part A, na? A gradual process, which is my noun phrase. And we just said that so will not come before a noun phrase. It will only be such. Yeah? Because I have my definite article, I have my adjective gradual, and I have my noun process. है ना? Yeah? So this is my noun phrase. So error is in part A and not C. Change so to such. Not aware of it happening is absolutely fine, no problem. I'm not aware that something is happening in the cafeteria right now. Correct sentence, no? There's nothing wrong with happening. Which means it's just talking about something that is happening currently, ongoing. The action is continuous right now. है ना? Yeah? So, such candidates who have not cleared the written test will not be called for the interview. So, in this question, if you notice, right, we're specifically addressing a particular group of candidates who have not cleared the written test and some action is going to be taken. Obviously, you know, if you don't clear the written test, you will not be called for the interview. But I don't need such, right? Because we are not emphasizing here, we are distinguishing, we are determining, right? So the right determiner, so this is an incorrect intensifier here. I need to replace such with those, right? It's an incorrect intensifier here. I need those instead of such, because the meaning is I am distinguishing or determining the candidates, distinguishing the candidates who have not cleared the test, right? And what action is going to be taken for those candidates, है ना? So replace such with those. The error is in part A. So we need to also be able to identify when an intensifier is used incorrectly in a context, right? What is the context? Is the context meaning emphasizing something, or is the context determining or distinguishing something? Accordingly, I have to use the right determiner or right word. Yeah? So far good?